All right, and we are live with another episode of the Liberty Block. I'm your co-host Mike Sinello, actually on the road here at our founder Elliot's place in Axel's studio, room 2. On the phone with us because we couldn't get his internet to function properly is our normal co-host Dan Rice. Say hi to everyone, Dan.
I am here, not visually.
Yep. So,
but I am here.
So, as we've been doing with every show of the recent past, I don't know if Dan's got his tasty and delicious Corona out, but that's what we're going to be doing from here on. So, to our salute to Corona, who is not our sponsor, since we're gonna have another show that's dominated by Corona. Well, then let's have one.
Have at it. Actually, I am not having Corona at the moment. I overindulged yesterday just a little bit.
Well, that's probably a good thing because, to be quite frank, I'm at Elliot's household.
Contaminated.
Yeah, well, I'm at the Axel studio, who was kind enough to happen to just have Corona laying around the house. I couldn't find any limes, and I wasn't about to go out in New Hampshire, a state I'm not familiar with at all, to go try to find some at the last minute. And yeah, you are probably making the right decision here if you have to compare Corona without a lime to no Corona at all by not having the Corona at all.
Yeah, well, yes.
And yeah, Dan,
is it at least in a bottle, Mike?
Oh, it absolutely is, and it's ice cold. I just pulled it out of the fridge.
Okay.
So actually, on that note, Dan, we whenever we have our Coronas, you like to go a little disclaimer. So you want to give that disclaimer to everybody?
Yes, we are not mocking in any way. It is a real disease. We are not deniers that it's not a real disease. This is an issue which affects the elderly and immune compromised, and we take that serious. Our entire push here has just been to ask the questions that we feel need to be asked because we don't feel like we're being given 100% of the truth. But we are not making fun of anyone that dies from Corona. Every death is tragic.
Yeah. So to all the leftists that want to catch us in some sort of Kafka trap or something along those lines, yeah, that's how we do things here. We are. That's actually why we're doing that. So you can go ahead and this is something we stood by. This is something we said since about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we first started doing this. And
yes.
So you know what the left is going to do is to take that out of context. And theme of tonight's show: gaslighting. So I think what we're actually going to do as we start off our agenda is talk about we're not really going to talk too much about coronavirus itself today, like we normally do.
No.
We are going to talk about basically how wide the left has missed the right's interpretation of the appropriate way to handle this. And to a point where they are now taking Anthony Fauci, putting words into his mouth, and the most disgusting of all things, coming up with these ridiculous ad hoc arguments. You know what? We need to show everybody the whole video. Dan, if you can follow along at home, since we don't have a way to share our screen since you're over the phone. This is the coronavirus video. I've cut it down to about half length, so it's basically from about halfway through that video to its end, and we're going to show the whole thing. Here you go, folks. Enjoy.
So let me tell you from my experience, I can only speak from my own experience, is that we had been talking before any meetings that we had about the pros and the cons, the effectiveness or not of strong mitigations. So discussions were going on mostly among the medical people about what that would mean. The first and only time that Dr. Birx and I went in and formally made a recommendation to the president to actually have a, quote, shutdown in the sense of not really shutdown, but to really have strong mitigation. We discussed it. Obviously, there would be concern by some that, in fact, that might have some negative consequences. Nonetheless, the president listened to the recommendation and went to the mitigation. The next second time that I went with Dr. Birx into the president and said, 15 days are not enough. We need to go 30 days. Obviously, there were people who had a problem with that because of the potential secondary effects. Nonetheless, at that time, The president went with the health recommendations, and we extended it another 30 days. So I can only tell you what I know and what my recommendations were. But clearly, as happens all the time, there were interpretations of that response to a hypothetical question that I just thought it would be very nice for me to clarify because I didn't have the chance to clarify. Thank you.
The date on that. Excuse me, the date.
Here's where it gets bad, folks.
To be honest with you, I don't even remember what the date was, but I can just tell you the first and only time that I went in and said we should do mitigation strongly, the response was, yes, we'll do it.
And what did he do? Is that the travel restrictions?
No, the travel restriction is separate. That was whether or not we wanted to go into a mitigation stage of 15 days of mitigation. The travel was another recommendation. When we went in and said, we probably should be doing that, and the answer was yes. And then another time was we should do it with Europe, and the answer was yes. And the next time we should do it with the UK, and the answer was yes.
In this interview, you said there was pushback.
Yeah.
Where did that pushback come
No,
from?
it wasn't, and that was the wrong choice of words. You know what it was? When people discuss, not necessarily in front of the president, when people discuss, they say, well, you know, this is going to have maybe a harmful effect on this or on that. So it was a poor choice of words. There wasn't anybody saying, no, you shouldn't do that.
Are you doing this voluntarily, or did the
No,
president?
I'm doing it.
advise you?
Everything I do is voluntarily. Please, don't even imply that.
Yeah, so, excuse me, I gotta turn off my headphones on that sound. So what we just got there was a clip of Anthony Fauci basically discrediting everything the left has said about how Trump has handled the coronavirus and has basically completely taken his side on at least the timeline of events and how, excuse me, I've had a little gas in my breath because of this delicious Corona. So everything that Trump has been saying about how he's been treating this, basically Fauci came out right then and there and was saying that he was pretty much in line. Anytime Fauci and Birx recommended something, Trump was like, yes, let's just do it. So the left had to come up with this ad hoc, I'll say it, bullshit, ad hoc hypothesis. Well, you know, if Fauci's agreeing with Trump, if Fauci's saying that Trump has been doing everything that we could possibly reasonably have asked of a president in these circumstances, then maybe he must just be under some sort of nefarious influence. And that to me is just the most disgusting of all of the things that's going on here.
Yeah.
So
Well, you have to make him look bad.
yeah. And I mean,
There has to be something that he's done wrong, obviously. Because the American people voting for him, basically it all comes down to the destroy the president jihad that they've been on for 3 years now.
yeah. And you know, it's putting words into somebody's mouth that aren't there. And if the president, if everything seems to line up such that the president has done something correct, right? We've said this on the right. The president could cure cancer, you know, end world hunger, you know, end poverty around the world, bring peace on earth. He could cure your back knee and clear up your credit score, and the left will still find some way to say that wasn't the right thing to do. That there
was a cartoon going around there, or a meme going around for a while that if they saw Trump walking on water, the headline would be "Trump can't swim."
Yeah, right. So, so we do have to go into the left response, which I guess isn't really as much of a left response. Dan, I don't know if you got a chance to read this article from the Danbury News Times about what's happening in my hometown, the town I love, the town that you know, if it wasn't in Connecticut, would be a dream town. I hate Connecticut. I love New Milford. It's the town that raised me. It's the town I still to this day consider home. It's where all my friends and family are, and I hate giving airtime to Hearst Media, but it's the only way I can find an article on all of this. Dan, I hope you got a chance to read this article. But for those of you at home who are just now seeing this, that is absolutely true. New Milford residents not allowed to vote on town budget. So we'll go ahead and read the whole.
And is this, for those of us out west here where this isn't a common practice, is that how the budgets actually get passed back there?
Yeah, so I guess before we dive into the article, which we may not even need to do, I'll have to give the how-to, I guess, for budget referenda in Connecticut. Okay, so we actually have to take one giant step back because Connecticut is unique in the sense that, generally speaking, the towns actually supersede the state in certain respects. So when it comes to non-constitutional edicts from Hartford, if that is not in congruence with the pre-existing charters of the towns, the charters actually supersede what would be, for example, an executive order or a legislative act, right? So, in fact, in the town of Milford, it's Section 103 of the town's charter that makes this explicitly clear, that if for example, the charter requires that a referendum, which is basically a townwide vote, be held for the annual budget. The annual budget is bifurcated between the town side of the budget and the Board of Education side of the budget. Typically speaking, in New Milford, the town side of the budget is between $30 and $40 million, and the Board of Education side is between $63 and $68 million, some $65 plus million.
Right.
And that gets worked around each year, but over the last 2 or 3 years, it's been about there. So the normal process is that the town departments and the Board of Education basically make their budget presentations to the town council and the Board of Education and the Board of Finance at the joint budget hearings. After all the hearings are done, the mayor recommends his budget to the town council, who then makes their edits, who then make their recommendation to the Board of Finance, who then present a budget to the town to then vote on. And this is one of the rare cases where direct democracy can work. And I'm actually going to just get to the article here so people can read this article as we go here.
I posted the link, so
great.
Any of the viewers can see it.
Great. So yeah, if you guys don't want to follow along, if you guys just want to go right to the link, you can see it. I've tried to present this in as clear a fashion as possible. Unfortunately, the font that they use over at Hearst Media isn't exactly the largest. So every year, you can always rely on there being a town-wide vote for the budget. And to me, as a libertarian, where we'd like to devolve governance to the lowest, yeah, right. Like you don't want this to happen with the national federal budget, right? But when it comes to people who are paying property taxes in a town for a town, when you have that degree of locality, it makes sense to have a direct democracy for something like this, right? Especially in a town of less than 28,000, who, we got a census this year. I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest it's going to be a lot less than 28,000, and maybe even as low as in the 24 to 25,000 range. But the new executive orders don't allow for the town meeting process that New Milford does its budget referendum through to in any practical manner manifest. Now, I completely disagree with that, and I would suggest that Section 103 of the town charter is not in congruence with this executive order and thus should supersede it, and we should have a referendum. And I've already suggested in previous posts a half a dozen ways to continue to have the referendum, right? And the budget year doesn't begin until July 1. So in theory, you could just put the referendum off for a few weeks, right? Like you could, in theory. I mean, I don't see why you.
So who was it that canceled the vote, and do they have the authority legally to do that? I understand right now we're operating in a non-legal manner with all of the government overreach that's going on. But does somebody have the power to actually wave the wand and say no more vote?
I don't think so. I personally don't think so. So there was the town did get a legal opinion, and I totally disagree with the legal opinion. So,
right.
I'm
just trying to find. I don't really find in the article where I think they're taking advantage of the situation. Is what it's looking like.
Yeah,
they just don't want to have to be accountable to the people.
Right, and this is something that we're going to be bringing up throughout this show. That it seems like this is an act that is made out of convenience rather than out of principle. Now, this is coming from a Republican mayor. This is coming from Randy DeBella, who I think is some of the best municipal attorneys. One of the best municipal attorneys I've ever seen. and who has not normally been on this side of a legal interpretation. This is coming from a town council that is 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats. I don't know who in the end has the final say and how this manifests, but I can't imagine how this could be any more of an overreach from government, right? Like, I mean, what do you think of that? Like, I can't see how this is anything other than the most draconian measure imaginable.
Yeah, well, if you're a liberal, typical liberal that loves to spend other people's money, having to be accountable for this vote, which I wish they would do that out here. This seems like a way of disposing of that, because how quick do people get used to new situations? I mean, we're already used to seeing everybody covered in a mask now. So you cancel one election, how easy is it to cancel the next one, saying, oh yeah, you know what, we found other ways of doing this that seem to work better, and this is the new normal.
Right. And I understand that there are tremendous flaws with mail-in voting, but they're not even allowing the mail-in voting.
Right.
Which
the article saying that the mayor, it sounds to me, just glancing through the article, because no, I didn't have a chance to read it earlier, but it sounds like this came from the governor basically canceling any elections.
Right.
And the mayor basically is saying, hey, we should have at least been given a chance to find alternatives like a mail-in ballot.
Yeah. And this is coming from me, somebody who voted for Pete Bass twice, right? I think Pete Bass is the best mayor in my memory, right? And that goes back a long distance. So, I think he's relying on the advice of his attorneys, of the town's attorneys at Kramer and Anderson and Randy DeBella especially, which I get. I just don't see how they're correct. And even if they are correct on the law, this seems to me to be so immoral that I would be totally in favor of the mayor saying, screw that, we're going to have the vote, sue us.
Yeah, if you're standing on principle, Rosa Parks stood on principle, and
yeah, and she faced the consequences.
Went through what she went through. If this truly is his principle, he should be saying, no, screw it, we are voting, and let them lock me up. Yep,
and there's 100 different ways to go about this. I suggested opening voting booths to 24 hours. I suggested having more polling locations. I suggested, since everybody's at home anyways, assign your block to a voting hour so there's fewer people there. I suggested having multiple entrances and having just more widespread voting booths. And that's if you're still doing it in person. The other option is there already exists in Connecticut a mail-in voting option where you don't even have to have a reason. You just have to have 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, we have something similar to that here, actually, and I hate mail-in voting.
I do too.
I think it's lazy democracy, but it is better than no voting.
Exactly. I am in the side of the aisle that sees tremendous flaws in mail-in voting, but it is infinitely better than not voting at all. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, he should be, his quote here even is, I'm a firm believer the public should be allowed to vote. It's their tax money. Okay, back that up with some action. Do what you guys, you're on the road up there in New Hampshire. You went to a rally with Elliot, one of the other Liberty Block writers and the founder. And I remember leading up to it, Carla, what's her last name?
I actually don't know. We interviewed her, and I still don't know how to pronounce her last name. Garicki?
Yeah, it's South, because she's originally from South Africa, I believe. So she is one of those Dutch-sounding names.
Yeah. Sorry if I don't. Sorry, Carla.
A couple days before. So the event was yesterday, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it was a couple days before that I started seeing, because I have her on my friends, so she was putting out warning, because she's an attorney, and she was telling people, if they decide to arrest me, I'm going to 100% comply on the spot, and this is a matter of principle. But basically, you saw firsthand yesterday that whole event, and it's happening nationwide. I saw Ohio was doing it also.
Yep.
Of people defying the orders and saying, go ahead and arrest us if that's what you feel you need to do, if you can live with that on your conscience. So
Yeah.
I think this mayor ought to do that. He ought to step up like Carla and them did and say, I run this town along with the council. We believe this should happen. We are voting. We're going to find the way to make it happen. And if you guys at state level want to throw us in jail for allowing the people to vote, let's see how the optics on that pan out.
Yep. And Pete, if you wind up seeing this video, I love you, man. This is the right thing to do. Like, I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't have the guts to do this, because it's going to mean going to jail. Like, somebody's going to have to go to jail, and it's probably Pete, right? And I totally get it, and I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't do it. But Pete, if you do wind up seeing this video, this is the right thing to do. And this is something that we've talked about too, is that with these these rallies that you were talking about, like that Elliot and I got out and covered. If you guys haven't seen our videos, check us out, facebook.com/the Liberty Block. We've got some videos out. There's going to be more to come, trust me, from that rally. We got a chance to talk with people, and they were saying exactly the things that you and I have said, that, if you're going to try to delay this with these stay-at-home procedures, even if they're just suggestive, even if they're not prescriptive, people are not going to not work. People are not going to put up with this for very long, right? And that's why you're starting. And that's why you're starting to.
$1,200 only goes so far.
Right, and
that's one mortgage payment, if that.
I mean, for me. I can live on that for a month, not comfortably, but for a month, right? And I'm single, and I'm living in one of the cheapest areas in the country to live in, and that's why you're seeing things like what you're seeing right now here is sign the petition to reopen our state and restore our freedoms. This is from the Reopen New Hampshire campaign. 3,858 signers when I took this screenshot, which is about 2 days ago. So it could be a whole lot longer, right? And the idea is just what you've been saying. If people want to stay at home, fine, but don't force us to stay at home. I saw a meme that was going around that was actually a pretty good meme, which was quarantine is forcing sick people to stay at home. Tyranny is forcing healthy people to stay home. And the response nationwide has already come to pitchforks and torches. And like you said, this was the scene from Ohio. We had further protests in Michigan. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys video of that's just a screenshot of what was happening in Lansing, Michigan. This is what we managed to get here from the Liberty Block. If you guys want to check this out, up outside Concord. Yep, that was.
So that's good. That's good.
You see, there was a shot there right at the end of a person wearing a mask. So it's like people are still taking the precautions that they feel appropriate for themselves.
Right, and
which is what we've been saying.
Right, and if I go back to the agenda here, we wanted to get you guys video from the rally in Raleigh, North Carolina. Unfortunately, not only did the police shut it down, the only video we can get is from the police department in Raleigh, because the police department in Raleigh went to the social media sites and got the individuals who were posting videos from Raleigh, got those videos yanked, got them yeeted. So unfortunately, the only video that's out there is from the police department, and they won't let us share it. They've got it set to the privacy settings on it don't allow us to share it. There was another one in Richmond, Virginia that got shut down by police again, so we don't have any video from that. The one in Albany, New York, I have insider information on that one that I can't technically share right now. That one got shut down because of, we'll call it, police activity, and is getting rescheduled. You saw the one from Concord. Hartford, Connecticut is scheduled for Monday the 20th at 5 p.m. There's one scheduled for Indianapolis on Monday as well. I don't know exactly when that is. We're seeing these rallies all over the country, and they're all saying the same thing, which is, like you just said, if you want to stay home, stay home. You know, they're not saying what we should do is force everyone to go back to work and have a parade and you know, reinstitute the medicine of 1918. You know?
Yep. I did just drop the links that in the comment section so people can click on them if they want to see them themselves.
Yeah, so you guys can.
And just to add to that, I don't know if it happened this morning or last night. We had a vehicle protest here. There was over 100 vehicles that rode. Our state capitol is on a block, which I'm sure many are, but they rode the entire block around the state capitol building with over 100 cars.
Was that a moving event or was that a gridlock event?
Probably a combination of both. Because it was in vehicles, they said, and I haven't seen. I'm sure there were some people out there protesting, because there always is. But it specifically said it was vehicles, and they drove around the block repeatedly.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's probably about how many vehicles you could put, you know, bumper to bumper, traveling around the block. And
Dan, you know, you've been around this earth longer than I have, so maybe you can. I'm 34. I have never seen coordinated nationwide right-wing protests. I've never seen it before in my life in 34 years.
The closest I would say would be back when Tea Party came up.
And that was
because that was Obama got in and instantly he started just implementing all these things that were like just shocked people, and taxes being one, and you know, Tea Party taxed enough already. That was the original concept there, and a lot of those were pretty big. But this I think is definitely going to set a record in my lifetime.
Yeah,
I wasn't old enough. I guess. Well, I don't know if Kent State was at 60s or 70s and all
that was 19
protests and all.
That was 1970.
Yeah, so that was the year I was born. So I don't have a lot of memory of that. I remember I was protesting pretty heavily.
Yeah,
Diapers.
So
not really. I'm kidding. I wasn't protesting. My dad actually served over there.
Yeah. So this is going to lead us into the next segment, which is that like the left has these protests all the time. And so when the left starts complaining that, you know, hey, you guys, protests are wrong because every single one of these protests is barricading the roads, is dangerous to our citizens. They're disregarding the 6 feet rules and the mask wearing rules. Every single one of them is barricading the entrances to hospitals. And it's like, no, stop gaslighting. We see with our own eyes what's going on. We have footage from these events, right? Like everyone at home can go to
what was it? I think it was only last summer was up in Portland when the Antifa were blocking the roads, and they didn't even have police presence. They didn't have permits or any of that. There were actual just protesters in the street telling cars they could not drive down this road.
Right. They got into the road. Before that, in the Black Lives Matter protests, we had Black Lives Matter protesters piling into interstate highways, and forcing people to get off the highway at some random exit and zigzagging through pedestrians as they did so. Right? Like, number one, we have the video. Everyone can go to the Liberty Block's Facebook page, facebook.com/the Liberty Block. You can see our video footage. We will have more of it coming out. Everyone was on the sidewalk. No one entered the streets. Everyone that drove by to honk their horns was driving by and was continuing to move on and was obeying the traffic laws. You know, way more than half the people there were wearing masks. Elliot and I were basically the only ones who weren't, and it was only because the only way we could conduct interviews was to not have the masks, right? Like, how do you do an interview when you're doing things like this and you can't hear anything, right? Like,
exactly.
So that's why we did what we did, right? And that was the only reason we did what we did. So, number one, stop gaslighting. That's not what's happening at like any of these protests. And number two, you guys do it all the time. And every time that we bring up this complaint, your response is, First Amendment, get to do whatever the fuck we want to do, right?
Yeah.
So let's try to remain consistent and stop gaslighting. We can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Don't lie to
Well,
us.
And I think the public's waking up to it too. And I think partly, to go to your point of how big this is, and maybe only Tea Party before it was bigger or as big, but normally on this type of protest you get that, and the reason you see so many leftist protests is because they have no problem calling their boss, lying, saying they're sick if they even have a boss and they're not living in mom's basement, to go to a protest to make their point. But most of us on the conservative side of things respect our jobs and our bosses, and so we don't tend to protest as much. The thing with the shutdown, though, is this is affecting everybody, so everybody's frustrated. And if you don't have a job to go to, you got plenty of time to protest.
That's a very good point. Maybe the reason we don't see these right-wing protesters is because right-wingers don't like to protest. We like to be productive members of society. And the only reason you're seeing these protests now from the right is because we have been forced by government to not go to work. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Clip this.
I don't know if we've locked in a date, because I think we've tentatively been promised that May 1st we'll be allowed to get back to business, and it looks like our governor's moving in that direction. But I think we're actually going to be having a parking lot party at one of the local Chili's restaurants here on May 1st.
That if you don't want to go to it, and if you're afraid of getting COVID, you can stay at home.
Yep.
You don't have to go. And to those
I need
people,
my baby back, so I got to go.
yeah. So, and this is, and of course, the left is gaslighting all of this. And the best example of this has been my friend Jeremy Kaufman put up this post on his Facebook page. Dan, I don't know if you got a chance to see all of this thread, but here it is. It's an incredibly basic concept. Everyone should support #reopen protesters. Whether our most fundamental rights exist is completely independent of the seriousness of COVID. And his argument has nothing to do with the seriousness of COVID. That we should, at least in principle, be in support of the fundamental right.
Which is exactly what we've been saying all along, too, that we don't deny it's a real disease, that it has real consequences.
Right, and
so that's the theme we've been preaching from the beginning.
Which leads.
I put Jeremy's post. It's in the comments.
Great.
Also now,
so you guys can all follow along and see what we got here, right? Which is, here's a post from Yuri Brun. Unless you're an idiot, if you're not an idiot, you should obviously not support these protests. And then it's an image of what happened in 1918 when the governmental interventions were removed, and it's an arrow with a red scribbly line that says "What protesters want," which is implying that what protesters want is for people to fucking die, which is not what we've been saying. It's not even close to what we've been saying. Stop gaslighting. And here's another response to Jeremy's post from Yuri Brun. Jeremy is the guy on the left, and it's a bunch of stereotypes that are not representative of libertarians, saying you should be willing to die so we're not inconvenienced to a bunch of elderly people and children wearing masks, which again implies that what we want people to do is die. For matters of not principle, but of convenience. We've got and it's not just Yuri. We've got a post here from Carl Springley. I'm just waiting for one of these protests to be the seed of mass spreading of the virus, like the New Rochelle Synagogue or the Sioux Falls pork processing facility. That would literally give the protesters what they're asking for implicitly through their actions. So again, the left is telling us what these guys are protesting for is for people to die because they want people to die, impugning us with false motive. Again, we got one more. Dennis Goddard. Many of the protesters in the pics I saw were close to each other and not wearing masks. Those people are either ignorant of the facts or simply do not care if they accidentally kill other people. No, it has nothing to do if we care about other people. Either way, I do not support them. Manslaughterers are my enemy. You guys don't understand what manslaughter is. You guys don't understand what this position is. And the last thing we'll get to here before we go to our answer, which if you go to the protesters and ask them what they're there for, and actually have a conversation with them and engage in good faith. Kevin McCormick, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with Kevin McCormick. It's the thing that he's posted that is behind a paywall, so can't get to the actual article. So we're going to have to go out basically on this theory that I've seen kicking around like Reddit and stuff. I've seen a lot of suggestions that the protests are astroturfed. For example, Salon.com, Trump's Tea Party, are right-wing open the country protests an astroturf? So people know what astroturfing is. Astroturfing is when protesters are paid to show up as protesters.
Which happens on the left a lot.
A lot, because when you go behind the scenes, you find out these protesters are paid. And the quote evidence that they've got is that for a lot of these reopen groups that have the same name on Facebook, they're originating from the same person who's created a lot of these groups. Of course they are. Of course they are. Yeah. If Elliot Axelman decided to open up a Liberty Block TN for me or in Liberty Block AZ for you, of course it would be coming from the same IP. Of course it would. The thing that matters when it comes to paying people is that people have been paid. Nobody has been paid to do any of this. And if you go to the protest, if you engage in good faith at all, it'll be obvious. This is what Elliot and I ran into when we went to Concord. Elliot knew everyone there. There were 300 people there. Elliot knew all of them. I'm not sure how he was able to do it, but he knew all of them. And we can tell you that they're coming.
He doesn't sleep.
He doesn't sleep.
Elliot doesn't sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the obvious response, and this is somebody that was talking at the Liberty Block. This is let's see. Let me go to the agenda here. Make sure I've got the item listed for you. Okay. So this is and some honest journalism under item 4B. It's that short video right there that I will be that you guys are going to join in on right now.
So my 2 cents is if you want to stay home, stay home. If you want to lock yourself in your house and not go outside, do it. Why, if you're allergic to peanuts, why should peanuts be banned from everywhere in the world? If you are allergic to peanuts, don't eat peanuts. And if you want to stay home, stay home. And so my 2 cents is if you want to stay home, stay home.
You know, if you want to stay home, stay home. If you want to go out and run the risk of catching COVID, that's on you. And the thing is that you're not going to spread COVID to the people who stay at home. So the way you avoid this is to stay at home. And if you're the one that's totally in favor of forcing people to stay at home, then it's indefinitely, then you should have no problem with staying home indefinitely.
To me, to kind of not really sidetrack it, but an analogy to me is the anti-vax versus vax people. It kind of they contradict themselves. The vax people, there's a certain segment. I personally do vaccinations and all that, but I respect somebody that chooses not to. Yeah, because it's their choice.
Yeah.
But what you get from the pro-vax crowd often is that if you're an anti-vaxxer, you're going to kill us all. Okay, well that contradicts the whole concept of your vaccine. If you've taken the vaccine, how are you going to die because that other person doesn't have the vaccine?
Right. Right, you're not.
And it seems the same. It seems the same in this situation. Is these people are sitting there saying we all have to stay home. Okay, no, let some of us out. Let us develop herd immunity, and we'll move on. In fact, there was we didn't incorporate it into the agenda here, but just real briefly, there have been a couple studies that we talked about earlier that suggests that the number of people with immunity to this already is perhaps 50 to 85 times as high as we currently believe it is. And this is based on 2 different studies which can be peer-reviewed. One was out of Stanford, where they did a sampling in Santa Clara County, and the other was New England Journal of Medicine, which I think they're kind of a respected organization, and they monitored women arriving at hospitals over a 2 or 3 week period to give birth, and found in both of these studies on 2 different coasts, they found that virtually everybody was testing positive for it, but they were asymptomatic, which means they've already probably developed their immunity, which again goes toward what we talked about in the very beginning. That very early from the experts, they were saying that A lot of you will get this and never know that you had it. And then their next line that they would follow up was, a lot of you will get this and think that you just had a little cold for a day or two.
Yep.
Which is probably what's happened. How often do we wake up and, oh, we're not feeling great that day? So this could be going back to everything they said in the very beginning, which they now conveniently don't really bring up anymore. Because now if you walk out of if I walked out of my house right now without a mask, Mike, you're probably going to die tomorrow from this.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. I mean, the counter I always give is, okay, folks on the left, my prediction is that by tomorrow morning, 100 trillion people will be dead. Tell me why you don't think I'm overreacting. Tell me why that's a reasonable prediction. Right. And the other thing is like you said, what they told us from the beginning and what is not disputed even to this day is that even if you don't isolate for comorbidities, at least 80% of people will experience mild or no symptoms at all.
Right.
And this is what we talked about on like our very first podcast together here, Dan, was the sheep and the wolves example we gave. It's incredibly easy to isolate the people who probably need to be isolated. So let's isolate them. The rest of the population is almost certainly going to be fine. Almost certainly going to be fine. And in fact, by having them go to work and be productive in the economy, and this harkens back to something we said a few weeks ago. The left doesn't understand economics. We produced the study for you. You can go back and check. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We showed you the study. The left doesn't understand economics, right?
Right.
If you send people back to work, the vaccine will, in all likelihood, come to market a lot sooner because there's that capital backing that allows us to invest our resources more heavily into that sort of thing. Like, this is a win-win-win-win-win. There's no way you don't win with sending 70% of the population back to work.
Well, you can't keep people home this long. That's where these protests are. It's just the sheer frustration, because originally we were told 2 weeks. And we're pushing like a month in a lot of these cases now. We're told, okay, everyone needs to be isolated for 2 weeks, and that'll let us get over that hump. Okay, when's the 2 weeks in? There's somebody, was it Cuomo or somebody's talking like middle of July now?
Yeah. Which
I mean, you're reaching a point that, like I said earlier, the $1,200, that's maybe one mortgage payment. Maybe some of us that live in the less expensive areas like you can easily survive as a single person. That doesn't help a family.
No.
And so these people are getting frustrated. They want to see their paycheck there because something that doesn't get advertised a lot. You're seeing a lot of these finance companies and the mortgage companies. They're ever so generous that they're allowing you to not make your payment right now. Well, for fun, I logged on to look at mine. I made my payment. I wanted to see what the program was. So it's basically you can have 3 months of not paying us, and at the end of the 3 months, you have to pay us everything that's owed.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not at work, you're still not going to have the money 3 months from now. That's what these people are all. And again, they couldn't have planned it worse if it was planning, because basically what you've done is all the productive people that don't normally protest. Now you've told them, okay, you're not allowed to go to work. So now you got all this time on your hands, and the frustration sets in, and people get in their car and they go down to the state capitol and drive around the block, or in your guys' case, marching out there.
Yeah.
Did you have any police issues though?
Not one. Virtually everyone was packing heat. And we had probably a dozen or so guys that were in full body armor and everything, armed to the teeth.
Regular citizens?
Yes.
Regular citizens?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and the way you can tell the regular citizens is because they're wearing keen boots.
So how many people were, so roughly say 80% of people were packing open carry? Easily
Okay, 80%.
So how many people were at the rally? Have there been any numbers?
So a reasonable estimate from me and Elliot would be around 300 at peak. So
300.
Hold on.
300 is 240. So all these people packing heat. There had to have been at least 240 shootings. I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. So anyone watching at home, if you want to share this to Gray Shields, yes, they were. And by the way, it wasn't 300. 300 was our peak. So if you count the people that came in and left, or came in at the end and left, there were probably 500 people that came throughout the course of the day. It would be my guess.
Through the whole event, rather,
yeah.
at one time.
400 people armed, many of them to the teeth, right? And not even an incident. Not even an incident which flies in the face of...
There were mass arrests, though, right?
No.
Somebody's chiming in saying there were 130,000 shootings, though.
Yes, there were 300 to 500 people there.
That's a lot of magazines getting changed there.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of magazines getting changed. 130,000 people is the population of all of Manchester in Concord.
This person can't get their post right. The person actually meant there are 130,000 unemployed in New Hampshire.
Yeah, so our most recent...
Not shootings.
Yeah, our most recent estimate that we can get from a reliable source that we can absolutely confirm is 124,000. That's a few days old, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's up to or over 130,000 at this point. And
New Hampshire's like 1.3 million, 1.7, something like that.
yeah, 16% unemployment is what that works out to at 124,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so
And that's what these people are protesting. They're like,
Yep.
let's get back to work. Let's do the herd immunity. I mean, you can be like, again, we go back to time after time. You stay home if you want to stay home. And to, I guess, society's credit, because this is the new shame if you don't jump on this bandwagon, but most companies are telling their people, if you're uncomfortable coming to work, don't come to work.
yeah, that's fine. If that's how the business want to run, they can run it.
Take advantage of the generosity while you can get it, because it might not be there next year.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what we've been saying. Excuse me. What there was a point that Dan brought up, which is that and I think you were alluding to this, but I don't know if you actually brought that up. At some point, you put this many people out of work, then the downstream effects of the economic impact of the coronavirus here are going to be significantly worse than the coronavirus itself, right?
Yeah.
So we're not saying money matters more than life, because at some point the suicides are going to start piling up. At some point, the people who are malnourished and who are elderly and are dying because of malnourishment, which, by the way, kills more people than you could possibly imagine. I was a cemetery superintendent for 4 years, so I get to see the cause of death of all the people that come in. And it was an awful, awful, awful lot of people who were elderly and simply died of malnourishment because it's expensive, it's difficult, it takes a lot of resources to provide proper nutrition to somebody who's 89 and in poor health,
Right.
or recovering from surgery. It's difficult to do that.
Well, and I've said at one point, set us loose. Let's identify everybody that does need to be sheltered and kept away from this until it dies down. And I'm sure you'll get a massive volunteer effort going.
Yep.
Of people volunteering to drop food and a bottle of sanitary wipes at the front door.
Yep. And then
then leaving. We pull together as Americans, in Western society, for the most part, but especially as Americans, we pull together and help each other when there's floods or whatever. When we had some massive forest fires here a decade and a half ago, and we were getting trucks sent in from all over the country to help us. It's what we do. So, but the politician's solution is to lock us all into our house. And so, at what point?
Yeah, and the thing is, folks,
you have in Pennsylvania, you have this starting to think he's a whack job. This governor there, and he's constantly telling people to not do this or that, and then there'll be pictures of him with getting his makeup applied. And this kind of stuff. So he's not even following his own rules. So what's the point? And people see this.
Yeah.
You see the. I think it was New York. I saw a picture, and there were like 12 people crowded onto this tiny little stage. None of them had masks. None of them had gloves. So, are you like super immune because you've been elected to an office or appointed by a bureaucrat?
Yep. And the way you get rid...
This is what the people are questioning, and they're frustrated over it.
And the way you get rid of our complaints is to just lift the mandates. Or at the very least, send it down to the lowest level. At the very least, tell the 5 boroughs of New York, if those 5 boroughs want to institute communism, they can institute communism. If Rochester, New York has like 4 deaths and like 85 cases, I don't know if that's actually the number, but that's basically what, like Cookeville, Tennessee, I think it peaked out at like 68 cases, and I'm pretty sure no deaths. Why is Cookeville, Tennessee forced to shut down? That Cookeville, Tennessee is not New York. And we showed this map a few weeks ago. I don't have it right in front of me, so I can't bring it up. But we showed the map a few weeks ago. Like, if you look at the United States does not have a coronavirus problem. New York City and the immediate suburbs have a coronavirus problem. And so does New Orleans, because Mardi Gras in February, folks. You know, 500,000 screaming drunks down the narrow streets of the French Quarter. That's what happens. In the peak of the coronavirus outbreak, that's what happens. Lots of people get it, right? If you ever want to transmit a disease, that's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
And you brought up a point, too, about the money not lasting very long from the government. I want to make it clear, too, because we've said this before, because we're on the topic of gaslighting. We're on the record, folks. Clip this section. We don't want the government's money. We want our own money. We don't want more money from the government. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. Where's the money coming from? At this point, they're just printing the cash. So it's not going to do us any good in the long run to just completely live off the government's teat.
It's just like my mortgage company. Yeah, you get 3 months off now, but you owe us all of it at the end of those 3 months.
And then your mortgage interest rates are going to, I'm assuming, are you floating or fixed?
What's that?
Is your mortgage a floating interest or fixed interest?
Mine's fixed. I hate floating.
Wise. Well, everyone that's got these floating interest rates are going to see them go through the roof, because $6 trillion is $6 trillion, right? Everyone who's got investments, they're doing great right now. But if you're invested in any way in treasury bonds, T-bills, or anything of that sort, if you're in any way invested in China, in the long run, your investments are going to get hurt if we keep doing this.
Yeah, eventually they come collect them.
Yep. And the thing is, folks, I would love to just see some honest reporting on all of this. I would love to see somebody. You and I would not be outraged if the way that the media and the mainstream media covered this was in any way honest. If the way the left talked about this was in any way honest. So on that note,
and that's what we said in the first show.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to.
Things didn't add up. One plus one was not equal in 2.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to get from the Liberty Block when we write articles like this. Hundreds rally at Capitol demanding governor reopen New Hampshire. This is as neutral as you can get. There really were hundreds of people there. They really did rally. They really were at the Capitol. And what they were demanding was the governor reopen New Hampshire. We are a libertarian. We are an openly libertarian media outlet. And we are the source of neutrality, right? Right. And the article goes on. By noon on Saturday, by the way, this was the easiest article to clip because our website isn't riddled with pop-ups, ads, interlaced video and everything like that, and all this stuff that makes it impossible to navigate. It's not behind a paywall. LibertyBlock.com, folks. If you want honest, quality reporting and a UI that is reasonable to read, that's where you want to go. By noon on Saturday in southern New Hampshire, the snow had begun to turn into rain as temperatures increased into the 40s. Even before the official 12 o'clock start time of the Facebook-organized rally, around 100 people were gathered outside of the State House in Concord. Many of them brought flags and signs with them, and all of them brought lots of their passion for their freedom to choose how to respond to the coronavirus. Currently, Governor Sununu's executive order prohibits dine-in at restaurants and prohibits non-essential businesses from operating at all. After a few weeks of this lockdown, nearly 130,000 New Hampshire workers have filed for unemployment, bringing unemployment in the state near the 16% mark. I think the 130,000, it looks like Elliot just updated that relatively recently, and the yellow text means that it has been linked to an actual citation. As of April 17th, the state report showed that 37 deaths in New Hampshire have been attributed to COVID-19. Many citizens who attended the rally believe that the 0.00028%, I don't know if I got that right with the number of zeros, of New Hampshire residents losing their lives to a virus does not justify a 10 to 15% increase in unemployment. Nearly every person at the Capitol today seemed to believe that politicians politicians should not control the economy or personal decisions at all. And I'm sorry that I did not press the go link so you guys could read that. We'll come back to that part of the article in just a minute. Among the protesters were conservative groups, pro-gun groups, health freedom groups, and around a dozen state legislators. Many were simply individual people with no agenda at all other than freedom and getting back to work. Though some protesters openly carried firearms and many more have concealed carried, and 5 to 10 showed up in full battle gear, no arrests were made. As far as we could tell, police did not even show up at any point. The spontaneously organized group of around 300 protesters brought a few megaphones and speakers. A number of citizens spoke to the crowd and were answered by cheers and chants of "Live Free or Die." New Hampshire is sending a strong and clear message to Governor Sununu. It's time to let workers get back to work. And the asterisk is true. The Liberty Block conducted several interviews with participants, which will be uploaded shortly to the Liberty Block's Facebook page, and we've posted a link there that you guys can all check. I'll bring this article back so you guys can see the body that I forgot to post. Honest reporting. That's all we're asking for, folks.
Right. Which to put a disclaimer out there, our founder would like us to point out that very few of our articles are neutral in tone. I think what you're saying is we seem to be the ones that are asking the questions in a neutral manner.
This article is presented neutrally, Dan.
Yeah.
Like there's no opinion in this article.
Yeah, this one's more of a true news article.
But why
rather
is it?
than an opinion piece.
But why does it take a libertarian media outlet who is openly libertarian to put out honest reporting like this?
Right, yeah. We should be able to be pounding away with our mad opinions on stuff.
Right. And enforce...
rather than having to be an actual, I guess that makes us a journalist at this point, but we don't hide from the fact that we produce opinion pieces on the way things should be. And so you're right that us on the radical side of things, according to some people, to us it seems normal. But we're having to do the neutral reporting on things. Because, again, it goes back to we've never denied that corona is not a real disease. We've never denied that there aren't people that are greatly affected by it. But we're asking the questions, and we're not supposed to be. The mainstream media is supposed to ask questions, and they don't do that anymore.
No. And instead what we get is just endless dumb memes. And folks, tomorrow night's dumb meme, I haven't picked it out. I've got 2 or 3 lined up. They're good, folks. You're gonna love the Wednesday night's dumb meme of the week. So check it out. Check out tomorrow night.
When do you do your videos again? If you can remind everybody.
All right. So
you picked them on Monday, but then you upload a video on Wednesday, correct?
All right. I'll go through the whole thing right now. Ready? All right. Tomorrow night at 7, go to the Liberty Block's Facebook page, facebook.com/the Liberty Block. We will post the dumb meme of the week. And we are going to post it for you folks at home, you Liberty lovers at home, to shred. So give us your dirtiest comments. Give us your best reaction. And on Wednesday night, the best comments will make it into the video. And that's when I'm going to release the dumb meme of the week every week. I'm aiming for 7 o'clock every Wednesday night. Tune in, folks. I'll have it uploaded to my YouTube page, which is youtube.com/C/Captain Phoenix. That's the Captain Phoenix channel on YouTube. I'll upload it shortly thereafter to the to the Liberty Block's Facebook page. And of course, I'll have it on all of my channels. My personal channel, that's Mike Sinello, facebook.com/Mike Sinello. And at Library 2, my channel is at Captain Phoenix, all one word. So look out for that on Monday night and on Wednesday night. And folks, yes, we will. I'm hoping if I have time here, we will be getting more of those interviews and more of the videos from the rally on Saturday. I was hoping to get down to Connecticut to do that too today, but unfortunately, I think that got stomped out as well. And it was 10 o'clock in the morning, would have been more driving than I think I could have reasonably done. So that's...
People have about 48 hours to give their replies to the memes and before you actually produce the video on it.
Yeah.
So you guys have between Monday, you have Monday and Tuesday, and to get your replies in. And
yep.
Mike welcomes the shredding.
Oh, absolutely. We had one decent one last week and one really good one last week, and like I said, they do make the video. So, Dan, I think we've gone through our agenda here. Or actually, no, we haven't. We have one more topic on the agenda.
Would you like to go to the to Trump? Do you want to touch on that?
Well, we're at
your bold prediction.
Okay, we're at about an hour, so I'm going to try to hammer through this as fast as I can. All right. So I said last week on last week's show that Trump was the favorite. Now that we have seen the most motivated conservative base I have ever seen in my entire life. Like we said, Dan and I have never seen organized protests from the right in our lives, and in any way in this scale. We've seen the most motivated conservative base I've ever seen. Trump was the favorite last week. Now he's the prohibitive favorite. And if we can keep up this momentum, he will not only win, he will win in a landslide. I honestly think because of Ralph Northam, he's going to keep all the swing states because, we talked about how Gretchen what's her face up in Michigan might make
Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah, Gretchen Whitmer. I am totally wrong. If Biden nominates Gretchen Whitmer as his running mate as vice president, Michigan is a guaranteed loss because conservatives will get out and hate vote like you've never seen before, and Trump will win that as a guarantee, right? But
yeah, she's already implemented very draconian stay-at-home orders. You can't even go to your own second house if you haven't.
Yeah. So let's see if I got into specifics in the agenda here to make sure I have this. Okay, so here's my bold prediction for November, right? If this momentum keeps up and, Donald Trump is our president, he can go on a tweet storm. Who knows what the next six to 8 months will bring.
Right.
But if the momentum keeps up right now, then Trump is going to win all of the swing states, just like he did last in 2016, and he's going to win New Hampshire. New Hampshire, whose voter base was not motivated in 2016 in the conservative side, and is as motivated as it has ever been, and whose left wing has been demotivated by the fact that Bernie Sanders is not the candidate. So I think he actually runs away with New Hampshire. I think he's going to swing Virginia because Ralph Northam has so much hate vote going on in Western Virginia that turnout's going to be through the roof. And Virginia's turnout in 2016 was not good. And then I also predict that he's going to win one of either Oregon, Minnesota, New Mexico, or Maine. And in Maine, the way they do their delegates is a little bit different. So I'm predicting a majority at least. If he wins the state, by that I mean he would win a majority. So that would put the vote total in the Electoral College at roughly 320 to 210, which in 2020 would be a landslide. Yeah. And I'm going to predict that this is going to have major downstream effects in 2020 and possibly in 2022. So where you have states like Virginia, where you have a Democrat governor like.
Sorry, we keep stepping on chair. To piggyback on what you're saying, also there's another thing that I saw kind of breaking this week, which supports your argument here. Trump's now at the point of basically saying we need to get back to work. And now you're getting, especially in the Democrat-led states, you're getting governors saying, oh, no, that's my call to make. So now you're going to have him up there saying, hey, I've told them to get back to work. Your governor in your Democrat state is telling you shouldn't work.
Yeah. And I disagree with the notion that Trump should have the ability in any way to tell workers.
100%. I do too.
Yeah. That is the decision of.
My head exploded on, what was it, Monday or Tuesday when he said, I'm the president, I have all the power.
Yeah. Yeah. Good Trump, bad Trump, folks. This is called principles, being consistent. Bad Trump right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We criticize him when he's earned it and praise him when he's earned that.
Yep. All right, Dan, we've actually made it through the agenda in a reasonable amount of time. Do we have any questions coming in from, I'll see if we got any from YouTube. We don't have any questions coming in from YouTube.
I don't see any coming in from anybody that matters on Facebook. It seems we have one. There's a crazy guy that wants to legalize peanuts, which I had not heard that they were illegal.
Peanuts.
It's hashtag legalize peanuts.
Peanuts. Yeah.
Peanuts, like almond, pecan, peanuts.
Yes,
he
yes.
wants to legalize peanuts.
Dan, you have to really emphasize your pronunciation on that word because you're coming in over the phone, so it sounds like something else.
Oh yeah, and I could purposely, I could possibly be jumbling it on purpose too.
Okay. Yeah, well, that'll be this show's clip.
Yes, the legume, which is famous in the South. So hashtag legalize the legume that's famous in the South.
Yeah, made famous by George Washington Carver. All right. Well, then,
There you
if
go,
we don't
yeah.
if we don't have any questions to answer from the audience, it's been a wonderful show. Exactly one last swig of this Corona before we sign off.
There you go.
All right, folks, it's been fun. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Have a good one.